With every mindfulness class or practice or session, I like to start with the ringing of the bell. So tonight, we're going to talk about calm, comfort, and strength in these challenging and uncertain times that we've all been going through since March. It's been 6 months. Seems like 6 years in a way. We were all searching around for what we knew in our own life experience to help us through this, and many of us discovered that we didn't have any experience. So things started happening, and we started preparing in whatever ways we could. One thing that I remember, though, when I was a teenager in like 1965, I visited my grandmother with my mom in a small rural town in southeastern Idaho, and her friend Alice was there. And Alice was a very good longtime friend of my grandmother, and I knew that. And when she left, my grandmother said with kind of a wistful look in her eye, "Alice has always been very good to me." And I just kind of let it land there. I didn't ask any questions. After all, I was 15 and I probably didn't really care that much. But later my mother explained to me why. And it was because in 1918, during the great influenza of 1918, my grandmother's mother, my grandmother was 18 at the time, died of the influenza. And her friend Alice delivered fresh bread and milk to their doorstep for a very long time, when everyone was very afraid to go to anyone's home who had had the illness. And so then I had a very big impact on me. At this time, it had an impact. Then I just thought, well, this is now and it's science, and we don't have those kinds of pandemics anymore. But at this point in time, it struck me because of the kindness. All those years later, decades later, over 60 decades later, my grandmother still remembered the kindness that was shown to her family in this time of the pandemic. So that was what I carried with me, even through all of the information that started to come. The information from my youngest daughter, who was in the epicenter in the heart of New York City at Mount Sinai as a nurse, and the things that she was telling us, and the worry and concern that we had for her, and the things that she would tell us to be careful and do, all came to light. And so everyone started to do what they could do. They started collecting all the toilet paper. Some learned to bake sourdough bread and wipe down every piece of mail that came. And then things started to change. Some things have stayed the same, and precautions for sure, and have become our new normal. So trends develop. Trends come and go. And as I started to think about trends, I think that what always is beyond a trend and what's always lasting is good health. Having happiness and a sense of well-being and good posture. Those things always last and stay. So that's why this evening we're going to be talking about calm, comfort, and strength during these times. So to begin with, we'll start with calm, because that is the beginning. You know, first things first. There's a great Gary Larson cartoon. Maybe you've seen it. This little guy is sitting on his bed, and the window is to his left, and the sun is coming up. And he's gazing, as he sits there in his underwear, at a picture in front of him on his wall that says, "Pants first, then shoes." And I don't know why that's so funny to me, but it is, because sometimes we just have to know what's first. So what's first in becoming calm is our breath. So when you use a mindfulness practice, it always begins with the breath. I like to teach it with hand on heart, hand on the diaphragm. You can't see my hand down here very well, but I want to see that movement expand as you take a deep breath. So if you'll watch me first and then join in with me, that would be great. Inhale through the nose, expand that lower hand, and then the exhale through the nose. You'll feel some movement in the top hand, but I'd like you to see more movement in the lower hand. And you can let your eyes close down if you'd like. It's a very simple breathing activity. Some like to breathe in for the count of 4, and then exhale for the count of 6. So the out breath is just a little longer. But however, if you don't like to count the breaths, just do what I do and just let the exhale be a little longer. It's basic diaphragmatic breathing. But what it does is it causes our autonomic nervous system to ignite. So the vagus nerve runs down the back of our neck and down in our belly, puts us into the parasympathetic part of our nervous system. It's the rest and digest. And some say it's the healing room. But it definitely puts us into a place of calm. And we start to notice what is calm. So if you just continue that breath for a few more moments, I'll guide you into just a short practice with it. Hand on heart gives a neurological feeling of well-being. Soften the belly and let the exhale flow all the way down and out before you begin the next breath. And as you continue to breathe, noticing the breath, the inhale and the exhale, in through the nose and out through the nose, or through soft lips as you breathe out, whatever most comfortable for you. You'll start to notice what's already feeling relaxed. And if you have a sense of something that could relax a little more, maybe your shoulders can droop down into the frame of your body, let that happen as well. And just notice how the body automatically relaxes. Let your hands rest in your lap. If you would, just gently open your eyes, or you can keep them closed if you'd like, but a soft focus. You know, I used to think that the universal language was music or dance. And then one day, it has to be 10 years ago, I was teaching a healthier living series of classes that come from Stanford School of Medicine for people living with chronic illness and disease. And one of the practices is this diaphragmatic breathing to calm the body and to ease whatever discomfort may be there. Well, when I walked into this San Francisco library, I was the only one there that had English as their first language. Everyone else had their dictionaries out, and everything I was saying they were looking up in earnest and looking through their dictionary to find out what I possibly could be saying. And so I thought, the next section's the breathing exercise. How am I going to give them the cues to breathe in through the nose, soften the mouth and breathe out through the mouth, or also breathe out through the nose and soften their bodies and drop down into that place of calm. And so I thought, words are not going to be so useful. They can't be looking it up in their dictionaries. So I sat with them in the circle, and I didn't say anything. I just did this, and we started to breathe. Eyes closed. I saw shoulders relax. I saw faces relax. And so that's when I changed my mind. The universal language that we all can understand and bring a sense of calm to ourselves is our breath. So we now bring that calm to the next section of what we're going to talk about tonight, and that is comfort. And the way we can bring comfort to ourselves is just taking a few calm breaths and then see how we treat ourselves. What are the words that we say to ourselves that bring comfort? What are the tone? What is the expression on our face when we think about ourselves and a task at hand? Do we have a furrowed brow going about our whole day? Do we speak harshly to ourselves when we do something that is just a common everyday mishap? So bringing that sense of comfort to ourselves starts with ourselves. So if you would, imagine a friend or a loved one or a child even coming to you with a concern, a problem, an issue, anything that may be of worry to them. And bring to mind, close your eyes if you need to. Sometimes to go inside and think of these things, we do need to close our eyes. Think of how you respond to that person. What's your tone? What's a gesture? Do you lean into them? Do you offer them comfort and ease, encouragement? I bet all of those things are present in how you greet that loved one with that issue. So now, let's turn it towards ourselves. Many of the great teachers, Pema Chodron, and even in the Golden Rule, we learn that we must treat ourselves first, how we would like to be treated. So now go inward. Think of an issue that you have. Let your eyes close. Bring forth those memories of how you responded to that loved one, that child. Anyone that came to you, real or imaginary, it doesn't matter. And bring that same sense of compassion, of love, of empathy. Notice the tone of voice. That's right, notice the tone of voice. If there's any labels, notice if there's labels. And see if you can give yourself another label, a kind one. You're doing great. You're a good manager. You've done hard things before, and you'll continue to do hard things. You've had many experiences, and those experiences serve you well. And so we bring our sense of self to ourselves. That goodness, that basic goodness, that basic comfort that we own, that we know, that we give away freely, we now give it to ourselves. So then, strengths. How do we gain strength to do one more task, to go about what we want to accomplish? Not necessarily deeds or projects or that perfect loaf of sourdough bread, but that strength within us so that we can see this through and have a sense of community, because definitely that is one thing, that we are one community with these problems. And the more that we can sense that we're not alone, we may feel alone, but many of the feelings that we have are ones that others have too. So there's a sense of community in that. So strength. oftentimes, when we sit quietly, we can bring about strength by being a good thought detector. You know, we have 60 to 70,000 thoughts in a day. I don't know how they measured them, but they did. And so we have all of those thoughts mulling around in our subconscious mind. Some are true. Some may not be true. So we get to be very good when we sit quietly and notice those thoughts. It's just simple. Notice the thoughts that come. You can see them maybe as thought bubbles, soap bubbles. You know, soap bubbles that come up don't last long. They eventually pop, right? Especially if you look at them. So Dr. Dan Siegel says, if you have a worrisome thought or feeling, name it. And when you name it, it's almost like touching that soap bubble, and it disappears. Because they've also studied how long a thought or feeling lasts, unless we keep loading more and more on it. Only 7 to 8 seconds. Surprising, right? Really surprising. But what happens sometimes if we get a negative thought, we go down the rabbit hole of loading catastrophizing incidences and thoughts onto it, and so pretty soon we're in a pretty negative spot. Name it if it's true, but don't latch onto it. Name it, say yes, but don't latch onto it and add to it, because then we go into that catastrophic thinking that's really not going to serve us. It will deplete our energy, and actually when we get to that place of feeling that low, we're not in the parasympathetic nervous system anymore. We're in the sympathetic part of our nervous system, which is we're ready to fight, flee, or fawn, which is also freeze. And it depletes our energy. It also weakens our immune system. So it's not a healthy place for us to hang out. The place for us to hang out more often is in the parasympathetic nervous system. So again, going to those few calm breaths. See what other thoughts are there. All right? And then bring about a thought now. Maybe we can do this as a practice. All right, so if you would, close your eyes again. And bring about a time in your life. We've all had them. It doesn't have to be a major event or accomplishment. Just a time in your life when you felt really pretty good, strong. You just knew what you knew. Your intuition was there. All right? You just knew it. You didn't have to explain it. If somebody said, what was it that you felt? It was just maybe a knowing. All right? A knowing. It could be something simple, like even finding that parking spot you somehow had an inclination to know that you were going to find. You found something in the cupboard that you knew that was there. It could be anything. A phone call that you knew that was coming and then it came. It could be something that you had worked at for a while and then it turned out just fine. Difficulty in the beginning, perseverance furthered, says the I Ching in many questions you ask it. So things do work out in time. So think of that. Think of that instance, that experience, and then tap inside of your body of how it felt. Think simply. The subconscious mind's a pretty simple one. So think simply. Think simply. And then just know. Just know that things work out the way they're supposed to work out. And so now you can think of that saying that John Lennon's credited with, so is Oscar Wilde. I'm sure many have said it in different ways, but all things are good in the end. And if they're not good, it's not the end. Certainly, that's true for these times. So think of those feelings that you felt. Maybe it was free. Maybe it was strong. Maybe it was capable. Maybe it was you could do anything. I've heard them all. I've felt them inside of myself. So oftentimes the practice is just to take a few deep breaths. Breathe in that knowing, that strong feeling that you know. Because you own those feelings. The mind does not differentiate between real and imagined. So when you bring forth those feelings of strength and courage and compassion and connection and clarity, all of those good feelings, you own them. And it will help you make that next step, whatever that next step would be. Trust yourself and believe yourself. Talk kindly to yourself. You know, be that good thought detector. You know, it was a number of years ago, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, I took a course in NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, and it was about the self-talk. This particular lesson was about self-talk, and the assignment was to watch for one day the labels we gave ourselves, as well as the way we talk to ourselves. So I thought, oh, okay, this is going to be pretty easy. I've been practicing this for a while, and I think I'm pretty good at, you know, looking at the glass half full. So I thought this will be okay. So I woke up in the morning, I remembered my assignment. I put a sticky note on my mirror. Watch how you talk to yourself. Watch your tone of voice. If you give yourself any labels, watch that. And so I went about my daily chores, and by the time I got in morning chores, and by the time I got in my car to back out my car to go to work, it was 10 in the morning, I was a little astounded at how negative I had been to myself. I mean, just a minor spill in the kitchen turned out to be, what's wrong with you? Which, it was just a minor spill in the kitchen. But I had given myself kind of a nasty tone of voice reprimand for it. But anyway, I'm in the car, I'm backing out. I'm in the garage. And I notice, because I'm supposed to be noticing, my shoulders go up, they're tense. I'm thinking, be careful, backing out, Rebecca, you are a bad backer-outer. Well, I suddenly thought, bad backer-outer? I mean, even those words sounded rather juvenile, right? So I backed out. I did just fine, you know, used my mirrors and did just fine. And I'm going down the street and I'm thinking, where does that come from? Where does that come from? And I thought, well, maybe it comes from, I had 2 older brothers that, I don't know, they just drove very easily and quickly, and they practiced some, but it just, you know, they became good drivers through osmosis. And for me, you know, it came a little harder. My 3-year-old brother at the time, when I was learning to drive, had to show me where the clutch and the brake were situated. But still, I wondered, does it come from that? But then, no, it came to me. What happened? I was 14. I'd just gotten my license in Idaho. You could get your license at 14. And I was going to drive my dad's station wagon. He had a parking lot behind his store. And I was going to back out. I was backing out, actually, this big green station wagon. And I looked in my rear view mirrors, and I did all the things I was supposed to do, looked over my shoulder, and I backed out and smack right into the rear fender of a very nice but prominent lady in our community's red Cadillac. And in the 1960s, they had very long fenders, I guess you'd call them, and she was not happy. It was a brand new car, and I know on my part there were some tears. And my dad came out from the store. In fact, a lot of people came out and witnessed that I had backed out into this lovely woman's, this is Facebook, so I'm not going to say her name, and her car was badly dented. I remember my dad coming and putting his arm around me and saying, "Rebecca, don't worry, this is why we have insurance." So that was good. That was good. But somehow that message stuck in my mind. That thought, you are a bad backrouter. It had been over 50 years later. I'd been driving, never backed into anybody again. Yet that thought popped into my mind. So to be a good thought detector, I thought, is that true? Am I really a bad backer-outer? The answer's no. All this time, I haven't backed out into anyone else ever again. So, watch your thoughts. Are they true? Are they really, really true? It was time for me to give that thought up. So now, when I back out of the garage, I don't tense my shoulders and talk to myself in a mean way. I smile, and I think I'm a pretty good backer-outer. I don't bump into the car that's next to me. I back out easily. Of course, I have a back-out camera, but still, it makes me smile. So being a good thought detector gives us strength because we know what's true and what isn't true. And we can then decide to change those neural pathways. And so now I have a new neural pathway that's built over the old one. I'm not a bad backrouter. I'm actually a pretty good one. So that's how we can tap into our own strengths. Notice when maybe we've had difficulties, but those difficulties have turned into strengths. So, if things are not good, it's not the end. For all things are good in the end. So may you have calm. May you have comfort. And may you feel your strength. And along with this meta practice of all those trends that are still true, may you have good health and a wonderful sense of well-being. May you sit up a little straighter and taller with more strength and courage than you felt before. And may you be happy.